This is Barry Kuzay with the Young Americans for Liberty, an offshoot of the Campaign for Liberty, and he's got a nice message for us today. Did I pronounce your name right?
What's that?
Did I pronounce your name right?
Yes, yes. Okay. Yes, as you said, my name is Barry Kuzay, or you might remember me better as the guy who spoke after Ron Paul. Not too many people do speak after him, so it's kind of nice. But I'm just going to take a few minutes of your time to tell you a little bit about what Young Americans for Liberty is and what the organization has been doing lately and what we've got planned. Just a little bit, tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in Casanova, Wisconsin. It's a village of 300 people. And then I moved to Madison and went to the University of Wisconsin, a college of 40,000 people. So it's a little bit of a difference. And I graduated in May of 2009 with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering. And I also got married that month, and my wife and I now live in Sun Prairie. So how I became involved in Young Americans for Liberty was in the summer of 2008, I sent an email to Steve Bierfeld at the Campaign for Liberty asking, is it possible to somehow start a student chapter? And so he told me they were in the process of forming this, pretty much a student chapter version of Campaign for Liberty, which would become what's called Young Americans for Liberty. And so then I started a chapter at UW-Madison in fall of 2008. And the organization itself was officially launched on January 1st of 2009, the national organization. So as far as what Young Americans for Liberty is, it's often referred to as YAL, and it's basically the continuation of Students for Ron Paul. As I said, it started in 2009, and there are now over 150 active chapters around the country at colleges across the country. The mission of Young Americans for Liberty is to train, educate, and mobilize youth activists committed to winning on the principles of liberty and the Constitution. Our goal is to cast the leaders of tomorrow and reclaim the policies, candidates, and direction of our government. This is not a new beginning, but a continuation of a youth movement that is growing in this country. We, as Young Americans for Liberty, believe that government is the negation of liberty, that voluntary action is the only ethical behavior, that respect for the individual's property is fundamental to a peaceful society, that violent action is only warranted in defense of one's property, that an individual owns his or her body and is therefore responsible for his or her actions, and that society is a responsibility of the people, not the government. That's the statement of principles of the organization. And around Wisconsin, there are several active chapters active and forming chapters. The UW-Madison chapter has grown remarkably fast since last September. Their membership has probably doubled or something like that. And although they still have far fewer members than the College Republicans, the funny thing is they have more people coming to the meetings than the College Republicans do on average. I think the YAL holds maybe more interesting, cooler events that might explain that a little bit. And just to give you an idea of what events they have been holding, some of the events, the first big YAL chapters nationwide held an event called Real Change Requires Revolution on Obama's Inauguration Day, January 20th, 2009. Basically, it was kind of a counter event, a protest event where I know in UW-Madison I participated in that, and we set up basically in the student union, a high traffic area, we set up a booth, a table with signs and literature to pass out. And across the hall was the big screen showing the inauguration, so people looked behind them and they would see the opposite, I suppose you could say. And also on April 15th, Tax Day in 2009, we attended that event at the Capitol that Ken Van Doren mentioned earlier. We didn't organize it. We weren't involved in organizing it at all. It actually, I'm unfortunate to say, it seemed to be run by usurpers of the Tea Party movement because they had a person speaking who voted for the bailout at an anti-tax rally, and that's Paul Ryan I'm talking about. So it was kind of discouraging a little bit, but it was good to see so many people there who really didn't like what was going on, and there were a lot of YAL members there as well, with signs called saying "End the Fed" and stuff like that. So, and the good thing was what YAL did ahead of that event was they produced a video of about a week before the event of them preparing their signs and preparing the things they were going to bring to the event, and they posted that online, and that video on YouTube quickly got over 7,000 views, and when you search for Madison Tea Party, that was at the top of the list for a long time, and I think it still is. So it had a big influence on what message came across, even though Paul Ryan was a featured speaker. On Constitution Day, September 17th, a few YAL chapters in Wisconsin handed out constitutions throughout the week and held open discussions about the losses of our freedoms in the nation and how the Constitution relates to that. They also the Campaign for Liberty held that Audit the Fed petition delivery day later that month, and some YAL members participated in that. They delivered Audit the Fed petitions to Senator Herb Kohl's office in Madison. One of my favorite things they did on October 17th, at UW-Madison, they built a debt clock, and a big debt clock, I don't know, maybe 8 feet wide or something, and put it in a high traffic area on campus outside. And one of the members had a rolled up piece of paper making announcements, kind of saying, what are you folks doing here? This doesn't concern you. Don't look at this. Kind of representing a government official. So it was and saying the government is always right. Please continue walking. Do not look at this. Do not pay attention to the national debt. So you can probably find a video of it online. There's a really, it's about 9 minutes of constant laughter, I think, for me. Anyway, the interesting thing is that event made the front page of the Badger Herald newspaper, which is the biggest, most circulated newspaper on campus. And I mean, if you go into any classroom, you see multiple students reading that. So that was definitely a success. Also this year, this past week, the YAL nationwide held an event called Spring Break in Kentucky, where, and it just ended yesterday actually, where over 100 youth activists from the organization traveled to Kentucky to receive 2 days of political training and then work for 3 days on the campaign of their choice. And I think we have a good person running in Kentucky that they might have chosen. Of course, YAL doesn't, just like C4L doesn't endorse candidates, but Kentucky seemed like a nice place to go. So in the next couple of weeks, they're going to be holding End the War events. Chapters in Stevens Point and Madison will be holding anti-war events and petitioning to end the war in Afghanistan. As far as what the future of YAL probably is, I'd like to mention first, some of you might wonder, I know I wondered a lot about kind of to do with why college Republicans and the Republican Party seem to be kind of separate, and so why is YAL and Campaign for Liberty separate? And basically I think it's to do with the resources students have available. They don't usually have vehicles, they don't earn much money of their own, they're really restricted to campus activism. So the type of activism is often pretty different from what Campaign for Liberty members can do. And I think they're most effective at changing the climate of ideas on campuses, affecting the climate of ideas on campuses. From living in Madison for a few years now, I've kind of noticed that it is a very, very radical liberal town, and you get to notice that those ideas seem to radiate from the campus and from the university, because it's a university of 40,000 people, and that's a huge percentage of the whole city. So concentrating on the young, persuadable minds on campus, I think, is a very worthy goal for YAL. And as far as in the future, I believe YAL and Campaign for Liberty's most important role in the coming years will lie in nullification, pushing this issue of nullification. Petitioning distant politicians in the federal government who preside over millions of people is kind of becoming impractical, it seems, and I think Ken mentioned that and Ron Paul just mentioned that. that they're not as relevant as we think they are. I got some statistics for you to consider here. The U.S. population in 1790 was 4 million people. So the president was presiding over 4 million people. Wisconsin now has over 5 million residents. So a single U.S. representative now is somehow trying to fairly represent over 700,000 people, probably soon to be 1 million people. How do you represent 1 million people? I see a state Senate race as much more important than a U.S. Senate race, because there are 33 state senators and 100 U.S. senators. Imagine with everyone in here, us gathering all our forces to elect Liberty candidates like Ed Thompson and Rick Richards and organized Liberty volunteers. YAL will be putting the empowering message of nullification on everybody's mind in campuses and in the news. The gullible local news loves youth activism, and YAL has already had some success in this arena. And for example, I should mention there's an organization that takes an event. The organization happens to not to be associated with Young Americans for Liberty, but it happens to have many of the same members. And what they do covertly every Thursday night is an event called Freedom Fridays, where they paste freedom messages and quotes and facts and information all over campus. And so every Friday in Madison, people go to class and they see all these messages around campus. So every Friday they start to look forward to that. And this has made the news quite a few times. And one time there happened to be, I don't know if it was these people or not, but there happened to be on the Abraham Lincoln statue, they had lots of facts and quotes about Abraham Lincoln, kind of calling him a tyrant and whatnot, pasted all over that statue. And so there's kind of crazy things that the Young Americans for Liberty do. So if you're interested in joining, or you know someone who wants to join, or if you want to donate, there's a YL table in the next room. I'll be there during the breaks, and stop by if you want to chat, or if you know someone you'd like to refer to, or if you have any questions. I won't take much more of your time, but I would like to mention that donations are really essential for this kind of organization, because students, they don't have their own resources, and especially responsible ones in this organization aren't going to be borrowing money to invest on projects. And so today, if you make a $10 donation for Young Americans for Liberty, I have to plug, you get this special constitution, which is different from the Campaign for Liberty one a little bit. It has a foreword written by Ron Paul that appears only in this. It also contains the Declaration, of course, and the Articles of Confederation, and some kind of a timeline of interesting facts about the founding of this country. So it's a nicely designed, glossy constitution that you can get if you make a $10 donation. So with that, I'll thank you for your time, and have a nice day.